Hi, welcome to this discussion. I wanted to briefly talk about the problem you have with English Bibles. And the problem with English Bibles is that they're a transliteration. It's not a word-for-word translation. And most of the time you're going to have differences between words that can't be reconciled unless you add more words. So right out of the gate, I'm going to talk about the different translations. Like, they have newer translations that use more succinct words, and they're actually better renderings of the text. I'll give you an example. These things have I spoken unto you, that ye should not be offended. That's the King James Version of John chapter 16, verse 1. And if I go into a New English translation, it says it a lot better. It says, I have told you all these things so that you will not fall away. I love the New English translation, the Net Bible. And if you want to get the Net Bible, you can go to Bible.org. You can actually order physical Bibles that have the translator's notes that show you why they used the words they used, why words were omitted, why verses were omitted. There's actually reasons for these things, and they're not trying to hide it. It's not a scandal. It's not something, let's just say it's not a conspiracy, because the King James only people say it's a conspiracy and it's an evil translation and it's made by homosexuals and drunks and on and on and on. Come on, man. It's not that simple. It's not that simple. It's pretty deep why they changed the Bible, okay? And they didn't really actually change the Bible. They're obeying the manuscript evidence. That's what it is. So enough about that. I don't want to make this a King James only argument or against King James only, because that's just nonsense to begin with. But I wanted to get into the differences in the words, even in the King James Version. Like, the word offended here is rendered fall away in the Net. And that's a much better translation, fall away, because the word offended doesn't even make sense. These things, Jesus says, I have spoken unto you. What things? Well, he's talking about, this discussion starts back in John chapter 15, verse 18, where Jesus says, if the world hate you, ye know that it hated me before it hated you, right? So he's describing these things. It's the hatred of the world toward God, as was evidenced in their treatment of Christ himself. Now, the word offended, rendered offended, that the Net calls fall away, which fall away would actually be apostasize. Apostasia, I think, is the word. The word offended here is skandalizo in Greek, okay? So you don't need to be a Greek scholar. I'm not a Greek scholar, okay? I have what's called a lexicon, and it actually translates the words and defines them as well. So one great lexicon is Strong's Concordance, and it has the words of the Bible numbered according to the original language. So the word scandalizo is Greek 4624. That's the Strong's number, is G 4624. And a lot of other lexicons are also married to the Strong number. So Strong's came first, and they made this numbering system. So all the other lexicons that followed it used the Strong numbers, or most of them, to organize the words and also be able to work together with that lexicon. So other examples of this word offended, scandalizo, and here's the best one that I can see, and it's used in the same context. All ye shall be offended because of me this night. Matthew 26:31. Excuse me. Obviously, this is not the best rendering of the word. Fall away is a much better translation. And here's how Strong's defines the word scandalizo: to scandalize. Now, to scandalize your faith is to fall away, right? To be offended, as the King James says. So this isn't a great translation in the King James. And even the English isn't great. The modern English. To entrap, that is to trip up, or entice to sin, apostasy, or displeasure. To make, to offend. So that's the definition from Strong's. And you can see that there's a bit of a disconnect, and this is why you need to do word studies. Pistuo, the word believe, in John 3:16, whosoever believeth. Pistuo is the word that's used there. And if you look at the faith of Abraham, the faith of Abraham Paul talks about in Romans chapter 4, where he's going to sacrifice his own son, that's a lot different than intellectual head knowledge. So the word believe is just an intellectual assent. It's to agree with, it's to hold an idea. It completely misses what the word pistuo is all about. Now, pistuo does kind of mean believe, but if you read the definition, it's stronger. The Strong's definition says to have faith. Now, to have faith is to have action, because faith without works is dead. You have two guys in the Bible who talk about the faith of Abraham. Paul's one of them, and he says by faith alone, right? And then James is the other one, and James says faith without works is dead, right? And they both cite Abraham as their example. Paul says the same thing the scripture says in Genesis, that Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness. And and James says he was not justified by works alone, by faith alone, but by works. We see that Abraham was justified by works, James says. So there's a bit of friction between Paul and James there, but they're both right. And that's the crazy part about it, is the word believe doesn't really work for both of those definitions. I mean, it can, because that's the only word we have in English. Or maybe convinced, whosoever is convinced of Christ would work, because conviction, being convinced, that's when you actually go and take action, right? So it helps to do word studies, and there's tools you can use. I have something on my phone that's pretty good. I can get definitions to the original languages, original words on my phone. And you really need to be able to do that if you're serious about your faith and you want to see what the Bible really says. You have to look into the Greek, you have to look into the Hebrew, and start to study and actually do word studies in the Bible. I can't read a verse without going, hey, I wonder what that original word is in this verse. So it's opened up a whole new way to study the Bible for me, and I've been doing it for a long time. But when I first learned how to do that, I was so floored. I was like, yes, finally I can get to the bottom of everything that I've been wanting to know and unlock these things. So some great, I'll put some great tools down in the comments below, some links that you can look up and maybe start to look into these things for yourself. And I hope you study the Word. I hope you go more in depth. I hope when you read it, you go, hey, I wonder what the original word says. Because that's the whole point of this discussion today, is to get you to start thinking about these things and start to go deeper. God bless you. I hope you get into the Word and stay in it and retain that knowledge of God, because that's really the way that He's going to bless you. All right? Have peace, and I'll see you in the next video. Also, like and share and subscribe to my channel. Thanks.